Ethan Grunkemeyer versus Jaxon Smolik. Now that Bo Pribula's gone, Penn State's QB2 spot is up for grabs.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State football. Thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko, and I am your host of the show. QB2 battle. I'm expecting Jaxon Smolik and Ethan Grunkemeyer to battle it out for that backup spot behind Drew Allar. And speaking of quarterbacks, a familiar face is set to return to Happy Valley. And who steps up at wide receiver? Some names you should be focused on going into spring football. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So quickly, I want to refer back to my last episode in order to get this conversation started, because I didn't refer to Jaxon Smolik when talking about the quarterback room and how it was set up going into this upcoming season. And that was a failure on my part, and why I encourage people to contribute their thoughts in the comments section. It was just a simple mistake. It wasn't meant as disrespect. I just forgot to include him in my notes because he has been out for so long, but now that he's fully recovered from this long-term injury, he had a leg injury that he dealt with and kept him sidelined for the longest time, but he was practicing, he was slowly working his way back, but he never was really on the depth chart for Penn State. And now he's going to be a part of the depth chart this upcoming season. So QB2 is up for grabs. Bo Pribula transfers out. Ethan Grunkemeyer, all the potential, a lot of high praise for him, but Jaxon Smolik is someone that, myself included, has been forgotten about along the way, and he is a legit contender to be that backup to Drew Allar. So Smolik overcoming that leg injury. This is a quarterback that I believe is a smart, cerebral quarterback. James Franklin has always praised his deep ball ability, his deep throw accuracy, and Smolik is going into year 3. So this isn't a quarterback that just kind of is showing up, and Ethan Grunkemeyer shouldn't be expected to just be handed the QB2 spot just because Bo Pribula isn't there anymore. Smolik is definitely going to have a say here. For those who don't remember, this was somebody that was invited to the Elite 11. And I know the recruiting rankings are going to say differently, but I am going to side with the fact that he was invited to the competition that ranks, or not ranks, but evaluates the top 20 quarterbacks. They take 20 passers, and those 20 compete to be the best of the best in the country. So recruiting rankings aside, you don't get accidentally invited to this competition at a high school. Jaxon Smolik is a legitimate quarterback just because, and so don't necessarily read into that 3-star ranking from wherever, On3 or 24/7, etc. I'm looking at the fact that he was invited to the Elite 11. He participated in that competition. If he wasn't truly a top 20 quarterback in the nation, he wouldn't have been invited. That doesn't happen by accident. So Smolik, in the process, has flown under the radar because of this injury, but he is capable of being QB2. It is his 3rd year in the program. He has solid size. I mean, himself and Grunkemeyer actually built the same. Now, Smolik's 6'1" and Grunkemeyer's 6'2", but they're around that 200, 205 pounds, so they're pretty similarly built. I might argue that Grunkemeyer, just from what we've seen and what we've been told, is that Grunkemeyer is a little more athletic. And again, Smolik is overcoming that leg injury in terms of that dual threat ability. Okay? Because in the comments section, it's been pointed out that, Smolik is doing very well in the weight room. He's setting records. He's just as athletically gifted as a lot of these other players. So don't make the same mistake I did and forget that Smolik is a part of this conversation, does fill out the quarterback depth chart, and gives Penn State another reliable option to turn to, and why you have the privilege and the flexibility to have a backup quarterback battle. So Drew Allar is going to be your starter. QB2 is unclear. Ethan Grunkemeyer or Smolik. Now let's talk about Grunkemeyer, because he's received a lot of due praise. Now, he wasn't dealing with necessarily a similar long-term injury, but he was dealing with bumps and bruises a season ago. And that's probably part of the reason why we didn't really get to see Grunkemeyer a lot throughout the regular season. Then he played a little bit against SMU in garbage time through that interception. So hopefully, that's off of his shoulders there to have that career interception out of the way when he does ultimately take on a role at Penn State. But I think what's interesting here is that Grunkemeyer does have this subtle athletic ability in terms of dual threat running capabilities. Some teammates have hinted at it, that Grunkemeyer is actually faster and a little more athletic than people give him credit for. So does he take on that Beau Pribula role? I'm not here to make the argument that, he's just as agile, he's just as quick, he's just as fast as a Beau Pribula, because Pribula, and we're going to talk about him in the upcoming segment, Trace McSorley, how athletic and how tough they were. But if Grunkemeyer even possesses a fraction of that, I think it's fair to say that maybe you do include him and create a Grunk package. So instead of the Beau Pribula package, you can now extend this to Ethan Grunkemeyer if he is capable of that. I'm all for it. I think it adds an element to the offense. Now, I know at times it threw off the continuity of the game plan. Sometimes it was a little ice cold, but I like the changeup from time to time. It's great when it works and it stinks when it doesn't. But I think it's important to keep in the playbook just as an element of surprise that, okay, you do have to prepare for two quarterbacks on the football field at the same time. When it's on, it does work. So Andy Kotelnicki, this is part of his playbook one way or another. So if Grunkemeyer does give you that added element, you absolutely develop a portion of the playbook. And then if it works, you use it. If he's comfortable with it, if he does have that subtle athleticism that maybe not up to the standard of a Beau Pribula and formerly a Trace McSorley, but he does give you something a little bit more routinely than a Smolik or obviously the starter in Drew Allar, you absolutely include it and then find a way to perfect it to use it in games. So I'm not going to sit here and say that, he is this true dual threat quarterback, but if he's agile and shifty, why not try to find a way to include it and have it in your arsenal? Now, who would win this quarterback 2 battle? Who would be QB2 going into next season? It's too early to make this kind of prediction here. I really do think it's an even race. You have Smolik, who's been with the program longer, and it's really tough to say the things like arm strength, accuracy. I got to imagine that Grunk and Smolik are pretty much on the same page or on the same level when it comes to those things. Now, I would say that Grunk has more potential. Grunkemeyer has a little more athleticism, but if it's not that much to a point where it makes him that much of a better quarterback, then Smolik can easily compete and be QB2. Also, something worth pointing out, this very well might be the starting quarterback battle going into 2026. Beckham Kritza now doesn't have that pressure. So I mentioned Beckham Kritza a lot and that there would be maybe these high expectations if he had to be quarterback 3. And now he gets the time to sit back, develop, and learn and go through that true redshirt developmental season. The QB depth overall for Penn State is in a fantastic spot. Senior, veteran leader, 3rd year consecutive starting Drew Allar. Then you have Jaxon Smolik and Ethan Grunkemeyer. And then you can allow, the future of the QB room and a Beckham Kritza to go through that development. But you have 3 reliable options. I trust Drew Allar to be the starter, but if Jaxon Smolik needs to come in a spot start, same thing with Ethan Grunkemeyer. Those 2 are very capable of leading Penn State's offense. Drew Allar's obviously your guy, but you have not 1, but 2 reliable options behind him. Worst comes to worst. So Penn State's in a really great spot, despite losing Beau Pribula at the end of the day. Now, Pribula, he wore number 9. Somebody else that wore number 9, Trace McSorley. So Beau Pribula is out. A former number 9 is set to return to Happy Valley. Pat Kraft actually teased it over the weekend. Of all people, the athletic director teased the return of Trace McSorley. We'll discuss it more and what his role will be with Penn State coming up after the break. And today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. March basketball is almost here, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With PrizePicks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's fast, it's easy, and it keeps every game exciting. Throughout the week, you can build lineups and select players like a Jaxon Tatum. Do you think he'll have more or less than his points projection? Say it's 29 points. Do you like it to be more or less? Or what about Anthony Davis? Do you think he'll have more or less on his rebounds? 12 rebounds, for example. You can make your picks in as little as 60 seconds and stay engaged all game long. Then there's fast payouts. When you win, your money will hit your account in as little as 15 minutes. There's no waiting around. And PrizePicks even offers weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday, where you get a discounted player projection for even more value. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is PrizePicks. Run your game. Trace McSorley, number 9, the Wizard, is set to return to Penn State in a quarterback analyst role. And my initial reaction is, this is a great hire. This is something, there's a lot of benefits here for not only Trace McSorley, but this quarterback room between Allar, between Grunkemeyer, Smolik, and the rest of the group. But McSorley is set to be hired. It is not official yet, but Pat Kraft teased it at THON over the weekend, made the announcement in the Bryce Jordan Center, hey, that that McSorley is in the works to return to Penn State. And then Joe Smeltzer with Nittany Sports Now actually confirmed that Penn State is working towards making this move. So Trace McSorley is set to be hired. It is not officially official yet, but these things move rather quickly. So when you're watching or listening to this, things could obviously change and be made official. But McSorley taking on a QB analyst role, the initial reaction, it seems from generally from Penn State fans, other people that cover Penn State football, is this is something that is good for Drew Allar. But I think it's more instrumental for the likes of an Ethan Grunkemeyer, actually, because Allar is in his final season now. The initial take on it was that this is going to help Allar and his confidence and his mindset and everything else. I think where McSorley is going to be able to help is with that, but people forget that McSorley was really good at reading defenses. He was really good at making decisions. He played in the pros for a period of time. He started an NFL game. McSorley's a quarterback that, so yes, it goes along with this mindset, but it's more the fact that he knows how to prepare. He knows how to study the game. He knows how to read defenses in real time. So it's more than just, oh, he'll make Drew Allar's mindset tougher. No, it's because Drew Allar is a college football quarterback. So you still have to be borderline. You have to be tough at a minimum. But I think where McSorley's going to help is he's going to be able to point out maybe some inconsistencies and along those things where he's done it. He's lived it. He's been in the NFL. He was able to win games in crunch time. He was one of the more clutch quarterbacks. And I know that the game against USC in the Rose Bowl didn't go the way that it was. But above all else, Trace McSorley was a winner. He found a way to make plays. He found a way to win games. And that's where McSorley is going to be so valuable here. It's the preparation, it's the practice, it's living it as a Penn State quarterback and eventually moving on to the NFL when the odds were against him, right? McSorley is not your prototypical NFL quarterback, and for a portion of time, he was able to carve out a career in the pros. That takes a lot of work, that takes a lot of determination when people aren't looking to keep you long-term, but he was always able to find a way to stick around. And McSorley is going to be able to pass that on to Allar and Grunkemeyer and Smolik, etc. He's just going to be able to show that, hey, what is the life of an NFL quarterback? What is the preparation like in addition to his time at Penn State? He's always somebody that I've heard just in passing, other conversations that he's wanted to get into coaching. I know that he had some, fellow media member for a portion of time. But McSorley, I think, was kind of always destined for a coaching role at some point. This is also good for him because it eases him into a low pressure coaching role. He is an analyst. He can work with Danny O'Brien. He can work with Andy Kotelnicki, and it just kind of puts him in a learning experience in himself to get started in a coaching role where it's not extremely high pressure. And here's the benefit all around. Trace McSorley obviously graduated from Penn State, so he's going to want to be there. He's going to want to be in Happy Valley. He likes State College. He likes the university. His wife also played field hockey for Penn State. So there's just that love, that appreciation for Penn State, where as long as McSorley's going to have him, as long as Penn State's going to have him on staff, McSorley's going to want to be on the staff. He's going to view this place as a destination. So yes, it helps. This is what you want. You want people that want to be on staff, that enjoy State College, that enjoy Happy Valley, that view that as I can stay here for as long as necessary, as long as the team will have me. And that's kind of the case for McSorley. So I see some upward mobility here. I see that if he stays around as a QB analyst and then, maybe works his way, right? What happens with Danny O'Brien? Ultimately, what happens with Andy Kotelnicki? And I'm not trying to say that Trace McSorley is an offensive coordinator in waiting, but as the coaching staff shifts around and guys, there's going to be movement. There's going to be coaches that move on. There's going to be coaches that move up. And for example, if the QB coach role opens up in 2 years, 3 years, whatever have you, whatever the timeline is, and McSorley bides his time and works his way up the chain of command, we could see a situation where McSorley benefits for himself personally and Penn State does as well. So, but this is a place where he's not going to be looking to jump, to make a move because he likes Penn State above all else. Because he played football there, right? It's his place. So that's a big part of it. You don't always have to kind of worry that McSorley is looking over his shoulder to make some movement in his coaching career. This is a place that he wants to be and will stay no matter what it takes, as long as the school will have him on staff. Now, as for the wide receivers, people still view them as a liability. There's plenty of question marks surrounding this group still, even though I believe they are in a better spot going into next season. And I'll tell you the names to keep an eye on that will make this group better coming up here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on that action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Using FanDuel's live betting feature is great because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether you're backing your favorite team for a late-game rally or you're picking a player to hit a clutch three, you'll never feel like you missed a chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com and join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Now, I've already said that the wide receivers are in a better spot than they were a season ago, and that's because they went out and made additions like a Kyron Hudson and a Devonte Ross and their specific skill sets that do help the offense. Hudson can be wide receiver 1 here. Devonte Ross is that deep threat. Wide receiver 2, you can do a lot of things with speed. He has the speed, so jet sweeps, a lot of motion like Andy Kotelnicki likes to do, so they give you that, but it's more than just that. The players that are already with the team that are not even from the transfer portal, Kaden Saunders is somebody that is kind of forgotten about because he dealt with an injury all season long. He never really fully recovered from it. He was practicing down the stretch, but we didn't see him back with the team or back on the football field in game action. And obviously the season ended before there was that opportunity. So I think Saunders is somebody that we need to really keep an eye on here. This can be your starting slot receiver. I think if you're going to have a 3 wide receiver look, now I think Andy Kotelnicki is going to be balanced. He's going to have 2 running back formations. He's going to have 3 tight end formations. Eventually, it's not going to be necessarily the focal point, but you need to have 3-4 wide receiver sets. And Kaden Saunders can be that slot wide receiver. He was injured. But remember, once upon a time, he was a top 100 overall player in the country and bordering on a top 10 wide receiver. So the talent's there. He's just kind of battled some developmental issues. He came in as a smaller prospect, but now he's adjusted to the college speed and the college strength of the game. And he's now one of the veterans in the wide receiver room as well. So experience is going to go a long way. I think he does become that starting slot receiver. I know everyone's going to talk about Tyseer Denmark because what I think Penn State should do with the Tyseer Denmark is move him around where it is necessary. Because if you look at the depth chart, Penn State would be very set with its slot receiver spot. Liam Clifford is still there. So if you have a rotation of Kaden Saunders and Liam Clifford, there you go. You have a 1-2 punch there at that starting spot. But on the outside, it's a lot of uncertainty. There's not as much depth as you would like there to be. So Tyseer Denmark, Peter Gonzalez shouldn't be forgotten about. Josiah Brown going into year 2. Those are going to be the guys that are looked to as that next line on the wide receivers. Now, I'm not opposed to Penn State going in the transfer portal again and getting some depth and adding to it. I think it's worth mentioning Anthony Ivy as well, because he will factor into the depth, if you will. But Kyron, Hudson, Devonte Ross, after that, you really don't have a lot of certainty behind them, whereas Kaden Saunders, you have Liam Clifford, and then if you add Tyseer Denmark into the slot there, if he's the best of the bunch, because that's the presumption, is that Denmark's going to be the starting slot receiver, I would argue that it's Kaden Saunders. If he's 100%, Kaden Saunders is absolutely going to be capable of being that starting slot receiver. And then you have Devonte Ross on the outside, stretching the football field, attracting safety attention. Kyron Hudson being your number 1 overall possession receiver, and also someone that's going to be an avid blocker. He is going to be crucial and be a part of the run game because he is a bigger bodied wide receiver. Then the true freshman. I think it's fair to just which of the true freshmen could have an impact early on? Now, I think I don't want to give them lofty expectations. I don't want to say that this is realistic, but if all things go well, Kobe Howard, Matt Alton, they're enrolled early. Kobe Howard, in terms of the best skill set among the true freshman wide receivers, that's him. I think Kobe Howard possesses the intangibles in terms of route running, catching ability, just understanding the wide receiver position. If all things go well in his development, maybe he's somebody that factors into the rotation later into the season, and enrolling early helps. The biggest concern around Kobe Howard, Kobe Howard was always a really interesting prospect, but he dealt with injuries throughout his high school career. So once he fully recovered, he certainly looked the part of a solid 4-star. So Kobe Howard and Tyseer Denmark are players that definitely had not the smoothest high school careers, but once things settled in, now they're at Penn State. And that's why Denmark has lofty expectations. I think Kobe Howard kind of fits that bill as well. If you're looking for someone that just he's a raw prospect, might have all the potential in the world, but definitely needs to fine-tune those wide receiver skills, it is Matt Alton. This guy is extremely athletically gifted. If Marques Hagans can coach him up, and Alton has college-ready size already as it is, he has college-ready speed, it's going to be difficult to guard Alton if he can really tap into his potential. But his weakness, I would say right now, so that's where he would need that redshirt season. It would be very beneficial for Alton to go through that because he doesn't have that full wide receiver skill set. He did so much in high school, running back, wide receiver. He was kind of all over the place. But Alton, definitely the most athletically gifted. Alton would need to work on those specific skills that make you an all-around receiver. But Penn State has shown time and time again that, particularly on defense, but these players that have all the athleticism in the world, they just need to work on the X's and O's, the small things, footwork, everything else that goes along with being an all-around football player, not just an athlete. You have to turn into a football player, and that's the trajectory that Alton is on in this case. And I know people have their questions around Marques Hagans. Again, I continue to say give it time. These are his wide receivers now. He recruited these players, these prospects. They're here now. So it is his time to shine. It is his turn to actually make something of this wide receiver room rather than trying to scramble and recover and pick up the pieces of a room that was left pretty broken when he took it over back in 2023. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Before I let everyone go, I want to shout out THON. Over $17 million raised this time for this past year to fight childhood cancer. That's a new record. That's a new record in funds raised for such a noble cause. Not that it needs to be said, but the largest student-run philanthropy group in the world. Your efforts continue to make the world a better place. So much appreciation over here at Locked On Nittany Lions. And if you want to show your own appreciation for THON, I highly encourage you to do so as well. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. I really appreciate each and every one of you for checking out the show. If you are new to the show, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcast. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. And for more discussions around your favorite Penn State sports teams, including Penn State football, Penn State wrestling, Penn State basketball, keep it right here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And again, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. For your second listen and watch, check out Locked On Big Ten with host Craig Sheeman. Craig puts the Big Ten first, covers all 18 teams in depth, and that's why it's called Locked On Big Ten. It's available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, and it is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day.